Captain Carter sat in the cockpit of her F-22 Raptor, the world a blur of clouds and sunlight streaking across the canopy. Her gloved hands rested lightly on the controls, though every muscle was ready for action. The hum of the jet beneath her was a comforting rhythm, a familiar song of power and precision. Known throughout her squadron for her unshakable calm and razor-sharp instincts, had flown hundreds of missions, yet each sortie carried the thrill of uncertainty. Today, however, the routine training flight over the Rocky Mountain range seemed deceptively serene. Below her, the jagged peaks of the mountains stretched endlessly, snow-dusted summits piercing the sky, valleys cloaked in mist. The formation of jets moved like synchronized dancers across the vast expanse, a ballet of advanced military engineering and human skill. His eyes scanned her instruments automatically: altitude, speed, fuel levels, radar. Everything appeared normal. On the radio, pilots exchanged casual greetings, a rhythm of voices that carried the comfort of routine. But knew the sky could turn on a whim. In the Air Force, complacency was an enemy, and vigilance was a constant companion. As she adjusted her throttle, her mind worked ahead, calculating contingencies, imagining possible scenarios. Even during training, a single error could cascade into disaster. Her co-pilot and wingmen, skilled pilots in their own right, had come to rely on her judgment. They trusted her not just because of her record, but because she had the rare ability to remain calm when others panicked. The day started peacefully enough. The mission was standard: navigate a complex aerial route, practice formation maneuvers, and coordinate with support crews on the ground. Briefed her team before takeoff, outlining the plan in crisp, confident tones. Every pilot knew their role, yet emphasized the one thing that could never be rehearsed: adaptability. Planes, weather systems, they all have a mind of their own up here, she had said. Our job is to respect that unpredictability and be ready to act faster than it acts against us. As she climbed to higher altitude, the sun glinted off the canopy, casting a halo of light across the instruments. Allowed herself a brief moment of reflection: the sheer beauty of the sky, the freedom of flight, and the responsibility that came with it. Flying was not just about adrenaline or glory. It was about awareness, preparation, and the lives of those depending on her in ways they could not yet imagine. Suddenly, the radio crackled, a harsh and unfamiliar sound cutting through the calm. A voice, tense and urgent, broke through the chatter of routine communications. A cargo plane from a support squadron had reported an engine malfunction. His instincts flared immediately. She keyed her mic, her tone measured but authoritative. "This is Raven 1, I'm assessing. Stand by and hold your positions." Her call sign carried weight. Her wingmen instinctively paused, their attention shifting fully to her. Even in a formation of highly trained pilots, his presence demanded trust. Her mind began the rapid calculation process: altitude of the cargo plane, wind patterns, terrain below, potential landing zones, weather conditions, and the plane's diminishing engine capabilities. Every variable mattered. Seconds were precious, and hesitation could cost lives. She adjusted her trajectory, aligning her F-22 with the failing aircraft's path while maintaining a safe distance. Her eyes flicked between instruments and the horizon, simultaneously tracking the cargo plane's wobble and the mountains that threatened to obstruct their descent. Around her, the formation sensed the shift. Where moments ago there had been casual conversation and routine checks, now there was tension, an electric awareness that something had changed. Remained the calm eye in the storm, a professional presence radiating assurance. Her glances were deliberate, her movements precise. She spoke again into the radio, her voice steady, even gentle despite the emergency unfolding. "Raven 2, maintain formation. Cargo plane, I'm with you. We'll get through this together." For a moment, the vast expanse of sky seemed infinite and indifferent, a canvas for disaster or heroism. Carter, focused and composed, understood that today her skills would be tested in ways no training could replicate. The calm before the storm was over. The real test had just begun. The cargo plane shuddered violently, a deep, metallic groan echoing through its fuselage. Smoke trailed from the left engine, curling into the thin mountain air like a sinister omen. Inside, the crew gripped their seats, panic flickering across their faces as alarms screamed relentlessly. One of the navigators shouted a warning over the intercom, voice cracking with fear. The plane was losing altitude faster than expected. Outside, the formation of F-22s reacted immediately, pilots adjusting positions, scanning for a solution, but even their precision instruments couldn't fully stabilize the faltering aircraft. Her eyes narrowed, her mind a rapid-fire processor of data. She assessed the cargo plane's trajectory, the rate of descent, and the surrounding terrain. Every mountain peak, every gust of wind, every second counted. She knew the plane's engines were faltering and the valley below offered little forgiveness. The emergency was escalating faster than she had predicted. Yet, unlike the crew aboard the cargo plane's voice remained calm, controlled, a beacon amidst the storm. "Cargo 1," she called, her words deliberate. "We're here, stay with me, follow my instructions exactly." The other F-22 pilots observed silently, instinctively recognizing her authority. Her call sign, Raven 1, carried weight. For a moment even the air seemed to pause, the tension so thick it was almost visible, moved closer, keeping a safe but supportive distance. The cargo plane's wings tipped dangerously as turbulence whipped through the valley, and the pilot struggled to maintain control. His hands danced across her controls, making precise adjustments to maintain alignment. Each maneuver was calculated to perfection, a deadly ballet of physics and instinct. "Prepare for an emergency descent," she instructed over the radio, her tone steady. "I'm guiding you to the clearing just ahead. Keep the nose level and maintain heading, trust me." Her voice cut through the panic, a lifeline. The crew obeyed, fumbling but determined, clinging to her instructions as if their very survival depended on them, because it did. Every pilot knows that in moments like this, confidence is contagious, and radiated it in spades. Lightning flashed across the cloud-streaked sky, illuminating the mountains like jagged teeth. Rain began to hammer the canopy, making visibility treacherous, adjusted her altitude, factoring in wind shear, cloud density, and the cargo plane's faltering momentum. She spoke again, precise and reassuring. "Engage stabilizers manually. I'm compensating for engine failure. Keep wings level, eyes forward. We're not losing anyone today." Each word was a lifeline, each instruction a tether to survival. The tension inside the cargo plane eased slightly, replaced by grim focus. Meanwhile, the F-22 formation adjusted to the chaotic situation, maintaining position, providing support and scanning for obstacles. Coordinated each movement with almost surgical precision, calculating risk and reward with every heartbeat. Her mind raced, yet her voice never wavered. She was a master of composure, a rare calm in a storm of fear and uncertainty. Each second brought new danger. Gusts of wind threatening to push the cargo plane into cliffs, sudden downdrafts rattling wings, and the ever-present risk of mechanical failure worsening. The crew inside the cargo plane glanced at each other, eyes wide but resolute. Guidance had become their anchor. Her call sign over the radio was no longer just a name. It was hope, strategy, and authority bundled into a single, commanding presence. The descent was harrowing, but they followed. Inch by inch, the cargo plane's downward momentum slowed, the terrifying freefall giving way to controlled, albeit precarious, motion. Skill was holding them together, threading a needle through chaos and danger. For the first time since the emergency began, a flicker of confidence emerged. His calculated approach, combined with her unwavering calm, had transformed fear into action. Every pilot in the formation recognized the shift, from impending disaster to a possible miracle. And yet, the valley below waited, jagged and merciless, for the moment when courage alone would be tested against nature, machinery, and fate. Adjusted her throttle, the F-22 responding instantly to her precise commands. The mountains loomed closer, jagged and unforgiving, their snow-capped peaks slicing through the mist. Below, the cargo plane struggled to maintain altitude, its left engine coughing and sputtering with each second. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the swirling clouds and treacherous terrain. The valley was narrow, an unforgiving corridor between cliffs and trees, leaving no room for error. His eyes darted from instruments to horizon, calculating angles, speeds, and wind patterns with razor-sharp focus. Every maneuver mattered. Every decision was life or death. Her voice came calm, steady over the radio. "Adjust heading 5 degrees starboard. Maintain altitude. I've got your 6." Her instructions were precise, direct, and confident, like a compass guiding a lost ship. The cargo crew, tense and terrified, obeyed. The plane wobbled violently as the pilot struggled to regain control. F-22 positioned itself alongside, shielding the vulnerable aircraft from turbulent winds that threatened to push it into jagged cliffs. Her movements were seamless, almost effortless, but each action carried immense risk. One wrong adjustment, one miscalculation, and catastrophe would strike. The other F-22 pilots watched in a tense formation, a silent acknowledgement of mastery. They had trained for emergencies, but this scenario surpassed anything in simulations. The mountain air roared around them, winds whipping past their cockpits. Visibility was limited, the sun obscured by thick clouds, and the cargo plane's faltering engine sent streaks of smoke into the air. His mind worked faster than lightning, predicting gusts, compensating for gravity, and calculating trajectories that would take less than a second to execute, but could save every life aboard. "Prepare for turbulence. Brace and follow my commands precisely," she said. Her voice carried calm authority, instilling confidence in a panicked crew. Sweat dotted her brow, but her expression remained composed. Her hands guided the F-22 as if moving a single, massive instrument, adjusting altitude, pitch, and throttle simultaneously. The cargo plane's wings dipped perilously close to treetops. Made subtle corrections, nudging the aircraft with the precision of a surgeon, keeping it steady in a storm that seemed determined to rip it apart. Lightning struck again, illuminating the surrounding peaks in stark white flashes. Rain hammered the canopy, visibility dropping to mere meters. Each movement was a calculated risk. The cargo plane shuddered violently as wind shear struck, threatening to roll it into the rocky walls of the valley. His instincts took over, micro-adjustments in milliseconds, keeping them aligned. She communicated continuously, her voice steady, her instructions unwavering. "Steady, eyes on me, one step at a time." The crew's hands gripped the controls, their trust absolute. Time seemed suspended as guided the aircraft through the storm. Below, the valley narrowed, cliffs rising like jagged teeth. Trees swayed violently, some brushing dangerously close to the cargo plane's wings. His focus was complete, every distraction ignored. She guided the aircraft through the treacherous corridor, threading a needle of survival through an impossible path. Each passing second was a test of nerves, skill, and courage. The crew began to respond, actions smoother, their panic transforming into precise cooperation. The other F-22s maintained formation, their pilots awed into silence by the spectacle of control. They knew this was no ordinary mission. It was a high-stakes dance with death. Every pilot understood the stakes, but calm radiated through the formation like a magnet, pulling chaos into order. Inch by inch, the cargo plane advanced through the mountains, stability returning as led it toward a faint glimmer of hope, the clearing ahead. Survival was no longer certain but possible and held the key. Even amid the chaos, allowed herself a brief thought. Every decision she made, every maneuver she executed could mean life or death for everyone. Her focus sharpened further, and the storm no longer felt like an enemy. It was a puzzle to be solved. Inch by inch, they moved forward, threading through danger, every second bringing them closer to salvation or disaster. Eyes scanned the valley below, searching for anything that could serve as a landing site. The mountains rose like jagged walls, leaving little room for error. Then, almost miraculously, she spotted a narrow clearing, a small patch of earth framed by trees and rocky slopes. It was far from ideal, barely enough space for the cargo plane to touch down safely, but it was the only chance. Quickly ran mental calculations: descent angle, wind currents, altitude, and the failing engine's capacity. Each second counted. Hesitation could mean disaster. Her hands flew over the F-22's controls with practiced precision, nudging, banking, adjusting speed to maintain alignment with the cargo plane. The other F-22 pilots watched silently, trusting her judgment completely. Over the radio, her voice was calm yet urgent. "Cargo 1 clearing ahead. Prepare for emergency landing. I'll guide you step by step. Trust me and keep your focus." The crew inside the cargo plane exchanged nervous glances. Confidence was infectious, her call sign, Raven 1 becoming their lifeline. Turbulent winds battered the aircraft, each gust threatening to roll the cargo plane into the mountainside. Lightning illuminated the jagged cliffs, followed by deafening thunder that shook the valley. Adjusted her position, moving her F-22 slightly ahead and to the side, shielding the cargo plane from the worst turbulence. She spoke continuously, her voice precise, cutting through the fear and chaos. "Steady. Lower descent rate. Level wings. Keep heading. Almost there." The crew followed her instructions, hands trembling but coordinated, trusting her instincts completely. The plane dipped dangerously low, tree branches scraping its wings, engine sputtering with each laborious breath. His mind raced, calculating dozens of variables in seconds: wind direction, speed, weight distribution, and the failing engine's thrust. One miscalculation could send the plane crashing into jagged rocks. Sweat formed on her brow, yet her movements remained fluid, her voice steady. She adjusted the F-22, subtly guiding the cargo plane closer to the clearing with micro-movements that seemed almost effortless, but were life-saving. Time slowed as focus narrowed to the narrow strip of earth below. The valley had transformed from a stunning landscape into a deadly gauntlet. She visualized each second of the descent, predicting the plane's response to wind shifts, slope changes, and engine failures. "Stay with me, eyes forward. We're not losing anyone," she said, the calm authority in her voice steadying the crew's nerves. Inch by inch, the plane descended, responding to her precise guidance. The clearing grew closer, still perilously small but now within reach. Wingmen watched, awestruck, as she navigated the impossible path. Her micro-adjustments were flawless, each one compensating for environmental hazards, mechanical failure, and the crew's fear. The cargo plane began to stabilize, its descent less erratic as the clearing approached. The crew's panic slowly shifted to focused determination, their trust in unwavering. Every pilot in the formation understood the stakes. They had seen disasters unfold in simulation, but this was real and was controlling every variable. Lightning struck again, and wind gusts threatened to push the aircraft off course. His calm voice cut through the chaos. "Correct heading. Lower gently. Brace for slight turbulence." She guided the cargo plane with unwavering focus, the clearing just ahead. Trees loomed dangerously close, jagged cliffs threatened the edges, and the failing engine groaned beneath them, but precise instructions kept everyone aligned. The impossible landing was becoming possible. For a fleeting moment, allowed herself to acknowledge the risk. Every decision, every adjustment could spell survival or disaster. But she blocked fear, focusing instead on strategy and execution. The clearing beckoned below, a narrow promise of safety, and hands moved with surgical precision to bring the cargo plane closer, step by step, inch by inch, towards salvation. Eyes locked on the narrow clearing ahead, the last hope in a valley that seemed determined to claim them. The cargo plane's wings scraped perilously close to tree branches, and the sputtering engine groaned under the strain. Every second counted. She shifted her F-22 into a protective position, slightly ahead and to the side of the cargo plane, shielding it from the worst gusts while maintaining precise alignment. Her hands moved instinctively over the controls, each motion calculated, deliberate, and crucial. She spoke steadily over the radio, her voice cutting through the storm like a lifeline. "Maintain heading. Level wings. Gentle descent, clearing in sight. Eyes on me," she instructed. The crew's grips tightened on the controls, knuckles white. Sweat streaked their faces as they followed her guidance. Panic had been replaced by disciplined focus, every action measured, every decision hinging on steady hand. She could see their fear, but more importantly, she could see their trust, and it bolstered her resolve. Today, there would be no hesitation. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the jagged cliffs and forested slopes. Rain pounded the canopy of the cargo plane, reducing visibility to mere meters. His mind raced, calculating wind speeds, gust direction, and the subtle movements of the cargo plane's failing engine. Every micro-adjustment mattered. A fraction of a degree could make the difference between salvation and catastrophe. She nudged her F-22 with flawless precision, guiding the cargo plane closer to the clearing with a ballet of adjustments that only experience and instinct could produce. "Brace for turbulence," she warned, her voice calm but urgent. The cargo plane shuddered violently as a sudden downdraft threatened to push it sideways. Eyes tracked every movement, her fingers dancing across the controls in split-second responses. She synchronized her aircraft's movements with the cargo plane's faltering rhythm, effectively shepherding it through nature's gauntlet. Trees scraped closer, their branches threatening to rip through the fuselage, but its protective positioning kept the worst of the turbulence at bay. The crew's fear gave way to grim determination, following her precise instructions as they prepared for the landing. Guided them through step-by-step, throttle adjustments, wing corrections, minor pitch shifts. Inch by inch, the cargo plane descended, responding to her commands. Her voice was the thread keeping the fraying fabric of control intact. Outside, the mountains and forests seemed unyielding, yet skill carved a path of safety through the chaos. Every movement was exacting, yet executed with the confidence that had earned her the trust of every pilot who knew her. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The clearing grew larger but still offered barely enough room. The cargo plane's left engine sputtered, smoke curling upward as if mocking their struggle. His eyes didn't waver. She executed a daring maneuver, banking her F-22 slightly to create a buffer from the gusts that threatened the plane's descent. Her calculations were flawless. She balanced speed, altitude, and trajectory while compensating for every external variable. The cargo plane stabilized, responding almost perfectly to her guidance. Below, rescuers would have seen a miracle in motion. The cargo plane, a massive, vulnerable machine, was threading a narrow, hazardous path to safety, guided by one woman's calm authority and split-second decisions. His call sign, Raven 1, echoed over the radio like a mantra, instilling hope and confidence in the crew. The impossible maneuver had transformed disaster into possibility. The plane was steady now, just moments from reaching the clearing that represented life itself. Allowed herself a brief, fleeting thought, almost there. But she didn't relax. One misstep, one gust, one moment of hesitation could undo everything. Her focus sharpened even further, hands steady, mind clear, guiding the aircraft towards salvation, inch by precarious inch. The turning point had arrived. The cargo plane's fate hung in the balance and was its anchor, its guide, and its guardian. Its focus was absolute, her mind and body working in perfect harmony as she guided the cargo plane through the final stretch of the treacherous valley. The clearing below, though narrow and uneven, was the only hope for the stranded crew. Gusts of wind howled through the mountains, buffeting both aircraft, while rain reduced visibility to mere meters. Lightning flashed intermittently, illuminating the jagged peaks like white-hot daggers. The cargo plane's sputtering engine groaned in protest, each second bringing a new wave of danger. Remained calm, her breathing steady, her hands precise, and her mind a laser of calculation. "Maintain altitude. Level wings. Steady descent," she commanded, her voice unwavering. The cargo crew, tense and exhausted, obeyed. Every adjustment she instructed, every word she spoke, was a lifeline. Her presence acted as a stabilizing force in the chaos, a beacon for pilots and crew alike. Positioned her F-22 slightly ahead and to the side, shielding the cargo plane from the worst of the turbulence. She compensated for wind shear, engine sputter, and the aircraft's faltering momentum, guiding the plane inch by inch toward the narrow clearing. The valley below was unforgiving. Jagged cliffs jutted up from the forest floor, trees swayed violently in the storm, and the uneven terrain left no room for error. Eyes flicked between instruments, horizon, and the cargo plane, adjusting microseconds ahead of its every motion. Her calculations were instantaneous, a perfect fusion of instinct and experience. "Eyes forward, hands steady," she reminded the crew. "We're not losing anyone today." Her calm authority transformed fear into action. Each second felt like an eternity. The cargo plane dipped dangerously close to trees, branches scraping along its wings, nudged her F-22 to block sudden gusts, giving the fragile plane precious stability. The crew began to synchronize with her instructions, their panic slowly transforming into focused determination. The cargo plane responded, inching closer to the clearing with each careful maneuver. His voice remained the anchor, steady and precise, guiding them through a labyrinth of danger. Lightning struck nearby, the thunder rattling their ears and shaking the valley like a drum. Rain pelted the cockpit, visibility shrinking even further. Heart pounded, but her face betrayed no fear. Every adjustment, every micro-movement had to be flawless. She guided the cargo plane like a shepherd protecting a flock, balancing its weight, adjusting its trajectory, and compensating for each unpredictable gust. Inch by inch, the impossible began to feel achievable. The other F-22 pilots hovered in formation, silent witnesses to her skill. They understood the stakes. Any mistake could send the plane crashing into the mountains, but its presence radiated calm authority. Her mastery of the aircraft, her rapid calculations, and her unwavering confidence gave the cargo crew a chance at survival. Outside the storm and chaos, one woman's precision and courage were holding everyone's lives in balance. Finally, the clearing came fully into view, still narrow and uneven but achievable. Guided the cargo plane toward it with delicate adjustments, timing every maneuver perfectly. Branches scraped, turbulence rocked the fuselage, and the engine sputtered, yet the aircraft remained aloft. Its call sign echoed over the radio, Raven 1, a symbol of hope and unwavering authority. The crew followed her instructions flawlessly, inching closer to the narrow lifeline that would save them. As the cargo plane stabilized above the clearing, allowed herself a brief glance at her wingmen. They were watching, awestruck and silent, recognizing the extraordinary skill, courage, and calm that had turned near disaster into a fragile chance at survival. Every life now depended on the next seconds, and hands, mind, and voice would guide them through. She would not fail. The clearing stretched below, narrow, uneven, and surrounded by trees that swayed violently in the storm. His eyes locked on it, calculating each inch of space and each gust of wind. The cargo plane hovered precariously above the ground, its left engine sputtering with every breath. Sweat streaked her brow, but her expression remained composed, her hands steady on the controls. She guided the plane with absolute precision, balancing speed, angle, and altitude, every movement deliberate, every micro-adjustment critical. The lives of the crew depended entirely on her. "Steady, almost there," whispered over the radio, her voice calm but commanding. The cargo crew's hands were white-knuckled on the controls, their eyes wide with tension. She watched them respond to her every instruction, their movements synchronized with hers like an orchestra performing its most dangerous piece. Inch by inch, the plane descended, skimming over tree branches, the ground rushing up beneath them. F-22 positioned itself slightly ahead, creating a buffer against the gusts and turbulence that threatened to push the fragile aircraft off course. Lightning illuminated the valley again, casting stark shadows over the rocks and trees. Thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the cockpit but remained focused. She made subtle adjustments, tilting, nudging, correcting the cargo plane's descent, balancing physics, fear, and the failing engine. The crew began to breathe more evenly, trust solidifying in place of panic. Its call sign, Raven 1, echoed repeatedly over the radio, a symbol of hope and authority. She guided them like a shepherd leading a flock through a storm, every motion calculated, every word purposeful. The ground rushed closer. His heart pounded in rhythm with the cargo plane's groaning fuselage. She could see the uneven patches of the clearing, rocks, mud, and wet grass, but also the small patch that could serve as a landing strip. She directed the pilot to make minor corrections, throttle up, slight pitch adjustment, wings level. The cargo plane responded, inching closer to safety. F-22 mirrored its movements, providing guidance, shielding it from sudden gusts, and projecting confidence that radiated through the crew. "Hold steady, now," commanded, and the cargo plane's wheels touched the ground, bouncing slightly on the uneven earth. The shudder was violent, but the landing held. Relief surged like electricity through the cockpit. The crew exhaled in unison, some trembling, others crying quietly. Brought her F-22 down nearby, performing a perfect precision stop, the jet's nose pointing toward the plane she had just guided to safety. The valley, once a gauntlet of death, now seemed almost peaceful in the aftermath of their harrowing descent. The crew climbed out of the cargo plane, soaked and exhausted, yet alive. They rushed toward, gratitude evident on every face. She met their eyes, offering a small nod and a steadying hand when needed, never losing the calm composure that had guided them through the storm. Around them, the other pilots landed nearby, giving respectful nods, silent acknowledgments of the extraordinary skill and bravery that had saved lives. His calm presence had turned near-certain disaster into survival. Even as the rain eased, the adrenaline lingered. Allowed herself a moment to reflect. Today had been more than a test of skill. It had been a test of leadership, courage, and precision under pressure. Every decision she had made, every maneuver executed had been critical. The cargo plane and its crew were safe because she had remained focused, calculated, and calm, even when chaos threatened to overwhelm them. Her wingman approached, murmuring praise, but only shook her head, humility present despite the heroics. She glanced around at the clearing, the narrow patch of life carved out of the deadly valley, and felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The storm was over, the danger survived, and every life aboard that cargo plane was preserved. Today, she hadn't just flown a jet, she had commanded hope in the face of impossible odds. The storm had passed, leaving the valley glistening under a muted, overcast light. The cargo plane rested safely on the narrow clearing, wings intact, engines silent but holding. The crew climbed out, exhausted, soaked, and overwhelmed by relief. They gathered near F-22, faces streaked with mud and rain, eyes wide with gratitude. They surrounded her, murmuring thanks and words of awe, still shaking from the intensity of the harrowing descent. For them, she was more than a pilot. She was the reason they had survived. The call sign, Raven 1, now carried weight beyond the radio. It was etched into memory as a symbol of courage and skill. Allowed herself a deep exhale, the tension of the last hour finally ebbing away. She glanced at the valley, the jagged peaks that had threatened to become their tomb now bathed in a gentle light. Relief mingled with fatigue, but there was no time to dwell. She checked her instruments, ran through post-mission protocols, and ensured the crew was safe and accounted for. Every detail mattered even now because responsibility didn't end with the landing. Soon the other pilots and ground personnel arrived. Rescue teams had already assessed the terrain and the aircraft, marveling at the precision of the landing. Swingmen exchanged glances, unspoken admiration passing between them. They had witnessed a performance few could match, a blend of skill, composure, and instinct under extreme pressure. Her actions were not just about piloting. They were about leadership, the ability to command trust and to guide others through chaos without faltering. Later, as the crew and pilots gathered for debriefings, commanding officer approached. There was no fanfare, no ceremony in the valley, but the respect was palpable. "Carter, that was extraordinary," he said, voice steady but tinged with awe. "You kept everyone calm, guided the aircraft flawlessly, and saved every life. Today, you redefined what leadership in the skis looks like." Merely nodded, her humility intact. She had done what any pilot with the right training, courage, and focus could do. But she knew that few could maintain the calm in the storm as she had. The media would later report her heroism, labeling her a national hero. For the accolades mattered little. Her thoughts were on the crew she had guided safely through impossible conditions, the trust she had earned, and the silent acknowledgement of her wingmen. She reflected on the delicate balance of fear, courage, and precision that had guided her through the mission. Each decision, each adjustment had been critical. One wrong move could have ended in tragedy, but she had acted with clarity, skill, and heart. Her call sign, Raven 1, had become more than an identifier in the radio frequency. It was a symbol of reliability, leadership, and hope under pressure. Pilots would repeat it with respect, young cadets would learn of it in training, and the crew would never forget it. Understood that the real legacy of that day was not in medals or headlines, but in the lives saved, the inspiration imparted, and the reminder that calm, skill, and courage could prevail against the most extreme odds. As she prepared for the flight back to base, allowed herself a final glance at the valley. The mountains that had threatened to claim lives now seemed almost serene, a silent witness to the extraordinary events that had unfolded. She thought of the crew, safe and unharmed, and of the pilots who had relied on her judgment and authority. The day had tested her in ways no simulation could replicate, and she had emerged not just as a skilled pilot, but as a leader whose calm under pressure had become legend. The engines of her F-22 roared to life once more, lifted off, leaving the valley behind but carrying with her the memory of every heartbeat, every decision, every life she had protected. Today, she hadn't merely flown a jet. She had orchestrated survival against impossible odds, proving that courage, precision, and calm could indeed change the outcome of a disaster. Her story, her call sign, and her actions would echo long after the storm had passed, an enduring testament to human skill, leadership, and bravery in the skies.